On the very day the crown prince ascended the throne, I was thrown into the cold palace. That night, he took the hand of a beggar girl and came to me, asking for the phoenix hairpin. "Please, elder sister, help me put it on with your own hands." The beggar girl couldn't hide her delight, her tone laced with provocation. I smiled, finally letting go. Then I raised my hand, and forcefully, I lodged the phoenix hairpin permanently into her skull. In his fury, the crown prince drove a dagger straight into my heart. It was the keepsake I had given him when we pledged our love. When I opened my eyes again, I had gone back to the day he brought the beggar girl into the palace. "Don't be afraid, elder sister," she said. "Beggars are rough by nature. I've long gotten used to all these wounds." Without a word, I walked right up to her and kicked her hard, forcing her to kneel. "A beggar like you dares call me elder sister?" Slap her. A sharp pain in my chest suddenly cut off my breath. That cold dagger was still dull, but it drove straight into my heart. "Your Majesty, do you truly want me to place it on Afu myself?" I jolted awake, gasping for air. And the first thing I saw was Afu's freshly bathed face, inches from mine. I covered my chest with both hands, stunned for a moment. My body was perfectly fine, yet the pain had felt so real. Then I realized I had been reborn to the very day the crown prince brought Afu back. "Don't be afraid, elder sister," she repeated. "Beggars are used to being rough. I've long gotten used to injuries like these." In my past life, when I saw her body covered in bruises, I had genuinely felt a pang in my chest. But then Jiang Yi blamed me for every injury she had. This time, I stepped forward and kicked the back of her knee. The crack of her kneecaps slamming against the floor was crisp and satisfying. She stared at me in shock, fat tears rolling down her cheeks. So what if these tiny wounds were pinned on me? I couldn't care less. "Let me show you what real pain feels like." I grabbed her by the jaw. Then, with full strength, I slapped her across the face. Instantly, bright red marks bloomed across her cheeks. She clenched the hem of her clothes tightly, forcing back her sobs. "I don't know how I offended elder sister, please have mercy." I slapped her again. "A beggar with no background dares call me elder sister? Slap yourself." She opened her mouth, about to talk back, but when she saw the sharpness in my eyes, she instantly backed down. The sound of slaps echoed around us. Oddly enough, it brought me peace. In my past life, I pitted her for her background. She was, after all, someone Jiang Yi had personally brought back. So I treated her like a sister. But on the day of his coronation, Jiang Yi threw me into the cold palace. The position of empress must go to Afu. Only then will she no longer be bullied. Please understand my intentions. Using the power of my family's military, Jiang Yi had successfully become emperor, and couldn't wait to drag me down from the throne. In despair, I removed the phoenix hairpin from my head. "Please, elder sister, help me wear it yourself." Afu clearly didn't know what was good for her. I was trained in martial arts. How could I let a chance for revenge slip by? "Jiang Yi, are you sure you want me to place it on her myself?" This was my last chance for her and for myself. But Jiang Yi said nothing. He gave his silent approval. The faint glimmer of hope in my heart died instantly. I smiled faintly and slowly walked toward Afu. I lifted my hand, summoned my strength, and drove the phoenix hairpin deeply into her head. "You want it? Then take it." The next second, Jiang Yi stabbed the very dagger I had once given him, deep into my heart, until my vision blurred and the chaotic sounds around me faded into the distance. The sharp sound of a slap pulled me back from my thoughts. Her face and legs were covered in red marks. Now this looked like someone who had really been bullied. Even the lowest-ranked servants in the Eastern Palace came from proper families. "A beggar like you? Send her to clean the pigsties." She looked up at me in shock. I kicked her hard in the face. "No discipline at all. How dare you look your mistress in the eye like that?" The surrounding servants didn't dare make a sound. "What are you standing around for? Drag her to the pigsty." My dowry maid, Chun Tao, immediately ordered someone to haul the trash away. "Miss, she's the woman His Highness brought back. If you punish her so harshly in public, there might be consequences. And tonight is supposed to be your wedding night. Chun Tao shut up the moment she saw my face grow darker and darker. Jiang Yi and I had been married for half a month. On our wedding night, he'd rushed off to the frontier because of urgent military matters. Who would have thought, just half a month later, he returned and brought back a woman? His departure made me a laughingstock. His return made me one again. In my past life, after he came back from court, he spent the night at Pear Garden with Afu, because she cried to him, claiming all her bruises were my doing. Wedding night bliss? Reunion after time apart? What a joke. All I had was a lonely, sleepless night. No matter. Not just anyone gets to serve the crown prince. I was doing it for his own good. 2 hours later, Jiang Yi came back. Where's Afu? The first words out of his mouth, he was asking about Afu. He and I had grown up together. Even on our wedding day, he had never spoken to me with such concern. My eyes landed on the dagger hanging at his waist. Suddenly, it felt like 1,000 needles stabbed into my chest. That dagger was the gift I had chosen so carefully for his first expedition. My eyes stung, a blush rising to my cheeks. For once, I felt ashamed of my sincerity. I'm back safe and sound, aren't I? What are you so upset about? His tone held a trace of annoyance. How could he think like this? I never realized how self-centered he truly was. I swallowed my bitterness and forced a calm smile. Afu has been taken care of. Your Highness, you've had a long journey. Please rest. He frowned and waved me off, as if his feet were greased. He couldn't wait to leave. I'm going to check on her. He turned so fast that when I tried to grab his hand, I caught nothing but air. Anger surged in my chest. The words burst out before I could stop them. Jiang Yi, let's get divorced. He froze in place and turned back to look at me in shock. From the moment I could understand the world, I had always followed Jiang Yi. His birth mother had been the Empress's foot-washing maid. After climbing into the Emperor's bed, she gave birth to him. In order to secure his position as crown prince, she willingly gave him up to the Empress. At the time, the Empress was frail and sickly and hadn't borne a prince. And since his birth mother was deeply favored by the Emperor, Jiang Yi was officially adopted and made crown prince on the very day of the transfer. Later, after I was born, to strengthen his claim to the title, his birth mother, by then already a noble consort, clung to the Emperor and insisted on arranging this engagement. So from a young age, both Jiang Yi and I knew that we were destined to become husband and wife. Everything had seemed so natural and inevitable, but now here I was proposing a divorce. It was the last thing Jiang Yi ever expected. He couldn't afford to lose the support of the general's manor, his most powerful backing. So he turned around. Of course, he had to turn around. Deep down, he understood perfectly well which mattered more, Afu or the throne. So, even our crown princess is starting to throw childish tantrums? Divorce isn't something to joke about, he said, his tone suddenly soft, as he placed both hands gently on my shoulders. I couldn't help but frown, feeling a wave of disgust rise in me. Still, I acted like a delicate woman and brushed his hands away. You're clearly infatuated with that little beggar. The two of you look like a perfect match. What a loving pair. My words were dripping with sarcasm. Jiang Yi's face stiffened for a moment. At the side, Chun Tao was already staring at me wide-eyed, utterly stunned by everything I had done. There's nothing going on between her and me, Jiang Yi said quickly. We just got married. Why would I take a concubine so soon? Oh yes, officially, he brought her in as a personal maid, but behind closed doors, they were all over each other. He could hardly bear to let her out of his sight. Well, I'm relieved then, I replied. I thought your Highness was smitten with her. I was even considering settling her in the Pear Garden for you. But she said she's just a beggar. How could someone like her be worthy of living in the Pear Garden? And I thought about it too. Someone of unknown origin shouldn't be placed by your Highness's side. I really racked my brain trying to find her proper position. Jiang Yi's face turned visibly grim. A position? He asked. I nodded earnestly. Of course. We have to give her a reason to stay in the Eastern Palace. After all, she's someone you brought back. When Jiang Yi found out that I had assigned the woman he cared most about to clean the pigsty, he completely lost it. Shen Qingye. That's just cruel. I immediately put on a wronged expression. You're yelling at me over a beggar? He realized then that he had lost control. He took several deep breaths, but his voice still trembled. I wasn't yelling. You don't understand. She saved my life. Saved your life? I repeated. He must have been referring to that incident at the border town, where Afu supposedly calmed his spooked horse. I had heard about it in my past life, but calling it a life-saving act was a bit much, wasn't it? I scoffed inwardly. How did I ever throw myself so blindly at a man like this? People really do lose all sense when they're in love. Now that I stood at the edge of the abyss, detached from the mess, I could finally see clearly. Love is a poison without a cure. I was foolish, I said with a smile. But you never told me anything about this. All she said was that she was a beggar. Sigh. Chun Tao, go fetch Afu. Afu was carried back in Jiang Yi's arms, straight from the pigsty. I heard she was barely breathing. Jiang Yi looked like he wanted to kill me on the spot. But he hadn't completely lost his senses. And my talk of divorce had reminded him exactly how important I still was to him. That feeling of him wanting to eliminate me but not being able to was oddly satisfying. I didn't care if he was staying by her side. I didn't care if she was crying to him about how I'd punished her. Because in 3 days, the palace would host a banquet to celebrate the crown prince's triumphant return. It was during this very banquet that the dying old emperor was finally convinced Jiang Yi was capable enough to take over the empire. And it was also at this banquet that Afu seduced my younger brother, Shen Che. By rights, Shen Che had returned to the capital with Jiang Yi. He had seen Afu before, but for some reason, after that banquet, he became completely infatuated with her. He ended up angering Jiang Yi, who exiled him to the border and declared he would never be allowed back in the capital again. Just 1 month after arriving at the border, word came that he was dead. At the time, I thought he had gone mad, risking his life to fight the crown prince over a woman. When he left, we were still arguing. I was giving him the cold shoulder. That banquet turned out to be the last time I ever saw him. This time, I was determined to find out the truth.
Just what tricks was Afu playing?
On the day of the banquet, I gifted her a fine formal outfit, one befitting palace protocol. Seeing how gracious I was, Jiang Yi's attitude toward me eased up a little. That night, I sat beside him at the banquet table, shoulder to shoulder. Afu sat at a small table just behind and to our left. Her flawless makeup and extravagant attire drew quite a few stares. As I passed by her, I caught a whiff of a familiar scent. A faint trace of perfume, sweet, but with an undercurrent of seduction. I glanced at her in surprise. She kept her head down, pretending to be afraid of me. My heart thudded uneasily. That fragrance, Shen Che had gifted it to me 2 years ago. He bought it from the most luxurious cosmetic shop in a neighboring kingdom while gathering intelligence. But I'd never liked the scent. It was far too gaudy. Could it be that he had given it to her? I studied Afu's face carefully. Her skin glowed pink and soft, practically dewy. Her posture was upright and confident. No sign of nervousness. There was no longer a trace of the beggar girl she used to be. And in that moment, a cold dread settled over me. In my past life, I must have had lard blocking my brain. A beggar?
Ha!
How could I ever have believed she was really a beggar? Elder sister, please don't make things hard for Afu today. My thoughts were interrupted by Shen Che's voice. He had already taken a seat beside me, holding a wine cup, his face full of barely concealed blame. I kicked him to the ground without hesitation. He didn't see it coming and the wine cup flew from his hand. The movement drew many eyes to us. How did he find out I locked Afu in the pigsty? You idiot. The crown prince's woman. Is she someone you're allowed to covet? Shen Che, trained in martial arts, quickly got up and knelt beside me. But his face was red as a boiled pig's liver. I must have embarrassed him in front of the woman he liked. Elder sister, he muttered. He glared at me, his eyes full of disbelief and fear. Crown Princess, why such a violent outburst? The Empress cut Shun Che off. The entire hall fell into awkward silence, with hidden tensions bubbling underneath. The atmosphere between the Crown Prince and Shun Che became subtly strained. I stood up and shattered the oppressive quiet. I walked over to Afu and dragged her down to kneel with me before the Emperor and Empress. Your Highness brought back a beauty this time, and clearly they are fond of each other. Why else would he bring her to the celebration banquet? But my younger brother kept staring at her, and I couldn't help myself, so I ask your Majesty and the Empress for punishment. It was reckless of me. The moment I said this, both Jiang Yi and Shun Che couldn't sit still. They both immediately knelt down beside me. Mother, it's a misunderstanding. I brought Afu here because she once saved my life, said Jiang Yi. Your Majesty, please forgive me. My sister misunderstood me, Shun Che added hastily. I have no improper thoughts about Afu. It's just she looked so different from before that I glanced at her twice. I never expected my sister to react like that. Their words pleased me immensely. Saved your life? Were you ever in real danger? The Emperor picked up on the key point, and behind him, the noble consort looked deeply concerned. After we won the battle and returned to town, for some reason, my horse was startled. If not for Afu calming it down, I might have been thrown, Jiang Yi explained. The concern in the noble consort's eyes vanished instantly. That's it? That's your so-called life-saving debt? What a joke. The Emperor fell silent. The Empress, seeing the tension mount again, quickly stepped in. Afu, raise your head. Let me get a good look at you. Afu lifted her head, and the Empress's face immediately darkened with disgust. What family is this young lady from? Afu's face went pale. Her lips trembled for a long time, but she didn't know how to answer. Mother, Afu's background is pitiful. She lost her parents as a child and lived by begging. Her life has been full of hardship. I gently took Afu's hand. Since you saved the Crown Prince, you've also saved me. We will repay your kindness. The Empress's expression sank on the spot. She shot Jiang Yi a sharp glance. Qingya, you need to act with more composure. You are now the Crown Princess. How can you still roughhouse with your brother like you did as children? Return to your seat, all of you. I quickly acted coy. Mother, your advice is wise. I'll remember it always. Once he heard she was a beggar, the Emperor lost all interest in asking further. From start to finish, the noble consort sat silently, but the disdain in her eyes toward Afu was plain to see. In my past life, Afu attended the banquet as a maid by the Crown Prince's side. After the banquet ended and the Crown Prince got drunk, the Empress arranged for me to stay the night with him at Jingyang Palace. Afu returned to the Eastern Palace by carriage. It must have been during that brief time without the Crown Prince by her side that she latched onto Shun Che. But this time, my outburst had already thrown her plans into disarray. She wore Shun Che's favorite fragrance, clearly planning to seduce him. I shot Shun Che another fierce glare. When the banquet ends, I need to have a word with you. He had feared me since childhood. Seeing the sharpness in my eyes now, he swallowed his protests and gave a sullen in response. Back in my seat, I could tell Jiang Yi was holding back a storm of anger. He had just declared, in front of the Emperor and Empress, that he had no feelings for Afu.
He must be furious with me right now.
A glance at Afu showed she was calm and composed, gracefully picking up food. Her fingers didn't even tremble. That kind of nerve could never belong to a true beggar. Any commoner would have been scared witless by now after being dragged into such a scandal in front of the imperial family. I called Chun Tao over and told her to have someone keep an eye on Afu. Let's see what tricks she has left to play. Jiang Yi, meanwhile, was toasted again and again until he got dead drunk. Maybe it was because he was in such a foul mood. He seemed even more out of it than usual. The Empress instructed that we stay the night in Jingyang Palace. Afu was sent back to the Eastern Palace. On the way to Jingyang Palace, Shun Che followed behind me. He tried several times to speak, but each time swallowed his words. He knew full well this wasn't a place to speak recklessly. Palace walls had ears. Once we stepped inside the gates of Jingyang Palace. He had barely opened his mouth when I slapped him again. This time, he was quicker. Though he had drunk quite a bit, he was still trained in martial arts. "What's wrong with you today, elder sister?" He furrowed his brows and grabbed my wrist. My eyes welled up with tears at the sight of him, alive and standing in front of me. My chest ached with emotions I couldn't explain. This time, even if I had to hit him, I would wake him up. And if I couldn't wake him, I still couldn't let him die in vain in the borderlands, clueless and blind. Just thinking about it made my tears fall uncontrollably. Shun Che panicked. "Did that hurt?" He loosened his grip on my wrist. "If you want to hit me, then hit me. Why are you crying?" From childhood to now, I had never shed a single tear in front of him. He must have been frightened. I took a deep breath and tried to rein in my emotions. "Stay away from Matthew." Shun Che frowned even deeper. "Why would you think that? We barely know each other." Seeing him refuse to admit it, I raised my hand to hit him again. But this time, he didn't even try to dodge. He took the slap straight on the face. I clenched my fist and gritted my words through clenched teeth, full of bitter frustration. "Barely know each other? Then why did you give her perfume? Barely know each other? Then how did you hear so fast that I punished her?"
Schenke frase.
"Elder sister, don't talk nonsense. I never gave her any perfume. You punished her, and it wasn't because I went looking for the news. The whole Eastern Palace already knows. I just wanted to remind you not to lose your temper at the banquet. Who knew you'd kick me the moment I spoke?" His reaction filled me with a deep sense of relief. It seemed I had already completely severed that ill-fated bond from his past life. I gave a dry laugh. "If I hadn't kicked you, who knows where you'd be right now? So, just remember what I said. There are plenty of women in the capital, and more than enough out on the border. You'll find someone who suits you." Shin Che looked at me with clear, sincere eyes. "Elder sister, doesn't your heart ache?" I choked up for a moment, a wave of warmth rising in my chest. After all, we were siblings born of the same mother. It felt like he could see right through my heartache. But that was the crown princess from a past life. The woman standing in front of him, now, was the reborn Shin Qingye. Sooner or later, he would have his imperial harem. Whether my heart ached or not didn't really matter. "Just remember what I said today," I said. "At least that way, my outrageous scene in front of the emperor and empress won't have been in vain." After sending Shinche away, I no longer worried about Afu pulling any more tricks. I'd already exposed her in public today. Plenty of eyes were watching her now. The noble consort alone would be enough for her to handle. I stepped into the main hall, assuming Jiang Yi would be passed out drunk. But he was sitting at the head of the bed in his underclothes, staring at me. Panic stirred in my chest for no reason. Because of all the changes I'd made, nothing tonight was unfolding the way it had in my past life. Tonight would be different. "Your Highness, are you feeling unwell?" I gestured to Chun Tao to bring tea. But Jiang Yi coldly ordered, "Leave us. The crown princess and I are retiring for the night." Chun Tao's eyes went wide as realization hit her. She bolted from the room without another glance at me and closed the door behind her. I felt even worse. I hadn't expected him to be pretending. In my past life, our first night together had been a disaster. He was already in love with Afu, and I always wore a frosty face around him. He found me irritating just by sight. If not for the palace sending a matron to collect the proof of consummation, he probably wouldn't have entered my chamber at all. That night, he was drunk and showed not a trace of tenderness. Even in passion, he whispered Afu's name. I had felt utterly shattered, yet I'd still tried to comfort myself, telling myself that I had finally become his woman. The memory of that night made me shiver. Looking back on it now, I had been nothing short of pathetic. "Come here." Jiang Yi was clearly a little drunk, but there was a simmering resentment in his voice. I walked over to him, my mind racing for a way to dodge what was about to happen. But suddenly, he grabbed my wrist and yanked me into his arms, flipping over and pinning me beneath him. I hit the bed hard, my head spinning, and the stench of alcohol choked my breath. When you don't love someone, even one extra glance from them can make your skin crawl. His face was now right in front of mine. But I felt nothing, no heartbeat, no butterflies. Your Highness is drunk. You should rest. I pushed at him with both hands. But he didn't budge. Isn't this what you've been waiting for? Why act so virtuous now? Jiang Yi was enraged by my words. One of his hands started tearing at my outer robe. Jiang Yi. I tried to make him see who I was, to snap him back to his senses. But his eyes were bloodshot, full of nothing but desire. A chill shot through me. He really meant to go through with it. My mind raced through strategies. If gentleness didn't work, I'd have to fight back. But this was still the palace. My heart was no longer pounding with nervous joy. It was burning with the desire to ruin him. Then came the sharp pain at my neck. He didn't show a single ounce of tenderness. He was just using this opportunity, staying at Jingyang Palace, to quiet the Empress's suspicions and to punish me for humiliating Afu in front of the court. My heart went cold. To hell with it, if I was going to do this, I'd go all the way. I jabbed my fingers quickly at several pressure points on his back. Finally, he collapsed onto me, motionless. I gasped for breath and shoved him to the side. Thank heavens I had studied martial arts diligently at the general's manor. Who would have thought I'd use these skills on the man I once loved most? The next morning, the sun was already high when we woke. No one dared disturb us. Everyone probably assumed we had consummated our marriage at Jingyang Palace. Jiang Yi sat up with a start. He stared at the messy bed and at my body, covered in bruises. He was stunned. Right there in front of him was the blood-stained cloth, the proof of my virginity. He stared again and again, disbelief written all over his face. Last night, I studied my expression and slowly opened my eyes. My voice was laced with exhaustion. Your Highness, my whole body feels like it's falling apart. I really didn't mean to scratch you. It's just that I feigned shyness, fumbling to get dressed. When Jiang Yi saw the claw marks all over himself, his face turned green. His waist, neck, thighs, back. Worst of all was his jaw. I hadn't held back. I had bitten down hard. Each mark screamed of how wild and intense last night had been. It had taken me a lot of effort to leave them all there. I'll go get some ointment. Jiang Yi stared at me like I was a monster, his expression dark and unreadable. My heart thudded wildly. As I got out of bed, I let my knees buckle and collapsed dramatically to the floor. Hiss! Even the best actors in the Imperial Opera couldn't top this performance of mine. A pair of large hands helped me up. I'll do it myself. He went to the drawer of the dressing table and pulled out a jar of bruise ointment. But when he saw his own reflection in the mirror, he was utterly horrified. The bruises on his neck were terrifying, and the bite on his jaw was a deep, dark red. I barely held back my laughter as I walked up to him. I didn't mean it, I swear, it's just that, well, really. He gave me a long, shadowy look, then glanced back at the disheveled bed behind us. He hurriedly put on his clothes and prepared to leave. I've already done my duty as Crown Prince. Now, can you stop making things difficult for Afu? I was in a great mood and cheerfully nodded. Of course. As your Highness is so vigorous, I said with a smile, I'd better find more sisters to serve you. I truly can't handle you all by myself. Perhaps I should start making arrangements now. Maybe Afu could share the burden for me? As I said this, Jiang Yi stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. He was still frustrated, he couldn't remember anything from last night, but my sweet flattery seemed to delight him nonetheless. He probably convinced himself that his performance had been nothing short of legendary. Rest well for now, he said, trying to act calm. We'll talk about concubines later. What? Talk about it later? How could that be acceptable? Jiang Yi, covered in scratches, avoided Afu for several days. Afraid, no doubt, that his precious darling would be heartbroken if she saw. How could I miss such a perfect opportunity? I immediately reported the matter to the Empress and invited a palace etiquette tutor to come instruct her. When Jiang Yi heard, He flew back like his feet were on fire. After just a few days apart, they acted like it had been 3 years. The anguish in his eyes was so intense that even I, a bystander, felt stirred by it. Shen Qingye, what tricks are you playing this time? Afu was balancing a tray on her head and had been standing under the blazing sun for half an hour. Just as he spoke, the tray crashed to the ground, and Afu collapsed right into Jiang Yi's arms. How perfect! Since when were beggars so delicate? I rushed over in mock panic, calling out anxiously, "Oh no, sister. Are you all right? How did you faint?" Jiang Yi couldn't spare a word for me. He swept her up in his arms and stormed off. I felt an indescribable joy in my heart. Talk later? No way. I wanted to discuss it right now. I quickly ordered Chen Tao to send some nourishing tonic to Afu's quarters. Surely, once they were alone and Afu saw all the scratches on his body, she wouldn't feel so pleased. That night, for the first time, Jiang Yi came to my chamber of his own accord. His eyes were full of rage, as if he'd suffered some grievance and had come to vent it on me. "What troubles your highness tonight?" He stepped forward and grabbed me by the throat, right where he'd bitten me that night. The pain seeped through his palm and spread like needles through my skin. "You alerted the Empress just so you could use palace rules to punish Afu?" Tears welled in my eyes from the pressure, my gaze hollow and full of despair. "I did it all for your highness," I gasped. "Afu is a beggar. She knows nothing of palace conduct, but she still has to live here. Do you think you can shield her from everything forever?" I went through great effort to ask the Empress to send a tutor. Wasn't that to help her stand beside you more properly? "Have you forgotten what your future holds?" Those words hit him like a slap of cold water. Jiang Yi slowly let go, eyeing me with reluctant doubt. I sucked in deep breaths, each one stabbing pain into my ribs. Curled on the floor, tears dripped onto my feet without restraint. He extended a large hand in front of me. I didn't even look at it. I composed myself and stood. "Your Highness should take a concubine soon," I said. "Or when national mourning begins, you'll be barred from doing so for 3 years. Shut your mouth. How dare you say such treasonous things?" Jiang Yi was furious at my audacity, but I knew the truth had struck a nerve. "Jiang Yi, I've thought about everything for your sake. How can you treat me like this? I do this for you and I can't win. I do it for Afu and I still can't win. I get jealous and I'm unreasonable. I help and I'm manipulative. Tell me, what do you want from me?" With tears streaming down my face and sorrow in my eyes, I made sure he saw me in the most aggrieved light possible. I had to stand on the highest moral ground and twist what was left of his conscience. I knew very well he could wait to take a concubine. But could Afu wait? The Emperor's health was worsening by the day. That was a fact I couldn't change. And while the throne was not yet settled, every prince still had a sliver of hope. No one in history ever took the dragon throne without stepping over the bones of their kin. So, why should Jiang Yi get to ascend on the shoulders of my general's manor? As for Afu, she was the deadliest piece on the board I could use to take him down. Eventually, even Jiang Yi couldn't resist the lure of beauty. He agreed to make Afu his official concubine. The excuse? To bring joy to the palace and lift the emperor's spirits. But in truth, he was afraid that once mourning began, she wouldn't survive the wait. On the day of the ceremony, Afu officially moved into the pear garden. There was no absurd drama with Shenche this time. The scene was peaceful, even warm. After that, the emperor's health declined rapidly. Jiang Yi spent every day in the palace tending to him and barely had time for Afu. The noble consort, Jiang Yi's birth mother, had never trusted Afu from the start. She had kept her under close watch ever since the ceremony, but still found no fault in her. But from the moment I learned that her perfume wasn't a gift from Shinche, I began to suspect the truth. Afu wasn't a beggar. She was likely connected to nobility from an enemy kingdom. She was calculating, deliberate, and sharp. If she had been a spy, then in my past life, she had succeeded brilliantly. The crown prince fell for her. A young general from the general's manor died for her. Just one woman had drained so much strength from the imperial court. Had I not killed her with my own hands on the day of the coronation, God knows what disasters she would have brought, clinging to Jiang Yi's side. That's what I realized after going back over everything in this second life. Her flawless, pale skin, her calm demeanor in front of the emperor, her rare, exotic perfume. It all screamed one truth. She is not what she seems. I needed an opportunity. I needed evidence. I had hoped the noble consort's people would uncover something. But they came up empty. Now the emperor's end was near. Jiang Yi was about to ascend the throne. Was everything truly going back to how it was? I decided I would visit this cunning little fox in the pear garden myself. The moment I stepped inside, that same foreign scent hit my nose. Such luxurious perfume, and she'd never once run out of it. Could she really be alone? Why are you standing outside, sister? Please come in. She had only a few maids attending her. Because of her status, no official title had been granted. She stood at the doorway, frail and weak, like a delicate flower, heavy with dew, looking at me so gently. I studied her carefully. I haven't seen you in a while. Just wanted to check if the servants have been treating you well. She invited me to the main seat, every move polite and proper, not a single flaw to be found. Clearly, she had studied well for the role of empress, no doubt. As I looked at her gentle expression, I couldn't help but sigh. If I hadn't already seen the venom behind her sweet demeanor, I might have fallen for her lies all over again in this life. I'm doing well, she replied with a soft smile. Thank you, sister, for your concern. I turned the prayer beads in my hand slowly. Your quarters smell wonderful, sister. Which shop in the capital makes such fine incense? A flicker of surprise crossed Afu's face, but she quickly smiled. If you like it, I'll send you some. It's nothing expensive, just something I made myself in my spare time. That caught me off guard. She signaled for Tsueju to fetch it. I accepted it with a smile, feigning surprise. To think someone with such a tragic past would have this kind of refined skill. Her hands tightened slightly, and a trace of panic flickered in her eyes. It's nothing to boast about, she said softly. When I was young, I had to sleep in the streets. I used to hide outside a cosmetic shop and watch them work. I picked up a few tricks that way. Everything I have is too lowly to show in polite society. That, at least, was the truth. It was something that couldn't stand the light of day. So I didn't dwell on it and changed the topic. Sister, do you know how to write? She bit her lip and shook her head, a picture of pitiful helplessness. I felt a stab of annoyance. If Jiang Yi saw that look, he'd probably accuse me of bullying her again. I was about to get up when a shadow suddenly darted through the door. How fast. After just a few days apart, His Highness the Crown Prince had come charging in to play the hero again. What are you doing here? Afu, what's wrong? He gripped her hands tightly, eyes full of tender concern. Afu's tears actually began to fall on cue. At that, Jiang Yi's face instantly darkened. Shen Qingye, you. But Afu quickly placed her delicate white hand over his mouth. Your Highness has misunderstood, sister. I was just thinking about my bitter childhood, and it made me emotional. It has nothing to do with her. She even gave me a fearful glance. That move worked like magic on Jiang Yi, just as it always had in the past. In my previous life, it was this exact helpless, fragile routine that slowly pushed me to the edge of a cliff. But now, I watched her like I was watching a court performance. Even the best actresses from the Imperial Opera couldn't outshine this pitiful little flower. Your Highness, you've wronged me terribly, I said sweetly. I just thought her fragrance smelled nice, and asked for some. She made it herself. It's a rare talent. In the capital, it takes at least 10 years of practice to achieve that kind of craftsmanship. I was already hinting at Jiang Yi. Whether he had the brains to pick it up, that was on him. I raised the small incense box and waved it lightly in front of Afu. Thank you, sister. When I run out, I won't be polite about asking for more. Afu trembled in Jiang Yi's arms. I stepped past them both and walked out.
My whole body was shaking.
At long last, I'd found her weakness. I carefully packed away the incense and sent it to the general's manor for safekeeping. In the days that followed, I steadily dug closer to the truth. But when the full reality finally revealed itself, I felt a chill down to my bones. Our entire general's manor, every one of us, had been sacrificed by Jiang Yi.
And Afu?
She wasn't some great love of his life. She was a decoy, planted by the enemy nation at his side because they didn't trust him completely. When the truth was laid bare, raw and bloody, the emperor died. As the crown princess, I naturally entered the palace to mourn and stayed at the empress's side. Whether Jiang Yi would successfully take the throne
Would all be decided today.
The empress's own son, the sixth prince, was just 5 years old. Even if she wanted her son to inherit the throne, the road ahead would be treacherous and bloody. Without absolute confidence, she wouldn't dare take that risk. That boy was her very life. And once the emperor passed and the crown prince ascended, his birth mother, the noble consort, would become the empress dowager. Blood runs thicker than water. The empress had to understand that truth. I vaguely remembered that, in my past life, on the day of the coronation, the young sixth prince had been heavily guarded. She must have endured more than a few humiliations. Mother, you must stay strong. I gently helped the empress to her bed. The sky may have fallen, but you still have the sixth prince. He will be your sky from now on. Hearing my words, the little prince hurried to the bed and clung to her side. Mother, you still have me. I'll protect you. The empress looked at him, her face full of maternal affection. But there was an unspeakable sorrow in her eyes. Once Jiang Yi was crowned, the sixth prince would be relocated to a separate residence. Mother and son, torn apart, who knew when they'd meet again? Your daughter has something to show you. I took a thin bamboo strip from my sleeve, the kind used to weave baskets. The empress accepted it curiously. What is this? Before her eyes, I removed the hairpin from my head and slid out a hidden slip of paper tucked inside. Do you remember the woman the crown prince brought back, Afu? She's a spy from the enemy nation. The empress gasped sharply. Be careful what you say. She's the crown prince's woman now. That made me smile from the heart. Exactly. She's his woman. So this note has everything to do with him. On that slip of paper, written in the enemy's language, were 6 simple words. Mission complete. Awaiting recognition. The meaning couldn't have been clearer. And who knew how many state secrets Afu had already leaked from the crown prince's residence? I'd stumbled upon her secret almost by chance. Her incense making? The perfect cover. But she didn't know. I'd once received that very scent. Anyone else might have overlooked it. She used ingredient purchases as her excuse, frequently sending her maids to a particular spice shop. She never went herself. She never used the same maid twice. So cautious. But I still caught her. The trick? She always ordered 2 identical baskets. One empty was delivered. The other came back full of materials. But my spies, though they never entered, had no idea the baskets were being switched. That day, when I visited the pear garden, Sueju handed me incense from one of those baskets. At first, I thought nothing of it, until I glanced around the room and saw ink and brushes. If she truly couldn't read or write, why would she keep writing tools in her private chamber? But she had lied. She said she was illiterate. I watched her closely. The only time her gaze flickered was when she saw that basket, right before Jiang Yi came storming in. I deliberately walked over to the basket and gently rested my hand on it. Her face turned pale with fear, and she collapsed right into the crown prince's arms. That confirmed everything I suspected. There was something wrong with the incense. There was something wrong with the basket. And most of all, there was something gravely wrong with her identity. After I finished recounting everything, the empress fell into a heavy silence. Does Mother truly believe the crown prince won a legitimate victory at the border? If Afu's identity had shocked me, then the crown prince's actions were an even greater surprise. The empress's eyes widened in disbelief. Shun Che had secretly raided the ruse shop. Under torture, the owner confessed a great deal, including several notes they hadn't managed to destroy. The contents were nothing short of treason. It turned out the crown prince's sudden campaign to the frontier was part of a long-planned scheme. Right before our wedding, the emperor had fallen gravely ill. After waking, his health had taken a sharp turn for the worse. But he never officially named a successor. Jiang Yi had no real accomplishments to speak of. He hadn't even left the capital before. So he secretly colluded with the enemy nation to stage a rebellion. Then he rushed off, and in just half a month, returned triumphant. In exchange, the enemy signed a secret deal. Once Jiang Yi took the throne, he'd offer them 12 cities as repayment. 12 cities. Those were lands the Shun family had defended with our lives for generations. He gave them away as casually as one might toss scraps to a beggar. And in the previous life, Shun Che, under Afu's spell, was sent to guard the border. He must have discovered the truth. That's why he died, so tragically on the battlefield. The Empress gripped the thin bamboo strip tightly. With a sharp crack, it snapped in two. Mother, are you truly going to let the nation we've protected for generations fall into enemy hands? The Empress's eyes turned red. She looked at the sixth prince, then tightened her grip around the paper. So, General Shin and the young general already know. I nodded solemnly. It's not just the general's manner. The vice ministers of rights and works, and even the Marquis of Wenchang, they all know now. The Empress cast a cautious glance at me, but my meaning couldn't have been clearer. This was the sixth prince's only chance. If he didn't seize it, then I would choose another prince to support. The Empress was too clever not to understand. No matter who ascended the throne, it could no longer be Jiang Yi. I believe you, she said at last. I'm tired. Go rest. I want to speak with the sixth prince alone. The day of the coronation finally arrived. Jiang Yi and I were both dressed in ceremonial robes, and under the gaze of the entire court, we walked slowly toward the glittering imperial dais. In that moment, past and present overlapped completely. The phoenix hairpin, the one that would end Afu's life, glimmered with every sway. Standing atop the dais, the sunlight was harsh. The sea of officials did not kneel. Even Li Gonggong, the eunuch meant to announce the decree, stood silently. Jiang Yi turned to glare at him. Li Zihai, why haven't you read the edict? Li Gonggong bowed respectfully. Your Highness, please be patient. One more important guest has yet to arrive. Jiang Yi began to sense something was wrong. He looked around, eyes darting. His hidden guards, whom he had placed so carefully, were all gone. In their place were unfamiliar faces. I stole a glance at him. Beads of sweat, fat as raindrops, rolled down his forehead. I stepped forward, pulled a silk handkerchief from my sleeve, and gently wiped his brow. There's no need to be nervous, Your Highness, I whispered. Whatever happens, I'm here with you. His gaze turned hollow. Suddenly, he shoved me aside. The heavy ceremonial robes tangled around my legs, and I stumbled to the floor. The entire hall fell dead silent. He snatched the imperial decree from Li Zihai and tore it open. A long, agonized roar erupted from his throat. Then he pulled the dagger I had once gifted him and held it to my neck. From within the inner palace, the Empress appeared, holding the sixth prince's hand. How dare you, she thundered. Guards, seize the crown prince at once. The ring of drawn swords filled the air. Jiang Yi's hand trembled. The blade pressed into my skin, and pain blossomed in a thin, sharp line. Shun Xingye, he spat. You've joined forces with outsiders to commit treason? I met his gaze, without a shred of fear. Your Highness, you're mistaken. If anyone has conspired with outsiders, it's you. You used 12 cities, the lifeblood of our nation, as gambling chips. Color drained from his face. He glanced nervously at the stunned court officials below. Jiang Yi, I said calmly, if you want to live, take my advice. Stop clinging to your delusions. Step down and let the sixth prince ascend. Perhaps, out of brotherly mercy, he'll spare your life.
Jiang Yi sudanisnet.
Shun Xingye, if I die, I'm taking you with me. The blood at my throat made Shin Che, hidden among the guards, panic. But I signaled him with my eyes, don't move. I had my own plans. I've always been loyal to your highness, I said softly. It was you who never trusted me. But if I gave you one more chance, would you believe me this time? His eyes blazed red. He had clearly lost all reason. Then take me inside, your highness. Let's talk. He froze for a moment, eyes suddenly unfamiliar. Shen Qingye, you really want to save me? I said nothing. How could I want to save him? I only wanted one thing. To kill him with my own hands. And destroy him from the inside out. Inside the hall, it was just Jiang Yi and me. And Xinche, who shoved in a tightly bound Afu. Even now, Jiang Yi still completely trusted her. The moment he saw how she'd been treated, he immediately raised his dagger at me. You cruel woman. You even had her tied up? I let out a cold laugh and pushed down the dagger he pointed at me. The metallic scent of blood made me nauseous. Your Highness, do you even know Afu's true identity? Unhurried, I began removing my heavy ceremonial headpiece, one ornament at a time. Don't tell me you still believe she's just a helpless little beggar? Jiang Yi didn't believe me. Even now, you still refuse to see the truth. I said, everything that's happened today, your entire downfall, was all thanks to her. She's a spy from the enemy nation. Do you really think trading 12 cities for so-called peace would bring stability to our people? Jiang Yi, you were wrong. So wrong. You handed over our country on a silver platter and welcomed the enemy right into the palace. Tell me, do you deserve to be emperor? Furious, Jiang Yi grabbed my collar. You're spouting lies. Afu was brought here by me. I know her better than anyone. He really wouldn't believe it unless he saw the coffin with his own eyes. I took out the written evidence of Afu's espionage and read it aloud, one line at a time. Trust has been secured with Jiang Yi. No progress yet on obtaining the military defense map. Missed the meeting with General Shen. We'll look for another opportunity. Jiang Yi is a fool. Nothing to fear. Defense map acquired. 3,000 troops southeast, 5,000 northwest, only 1,000 southwest. Most vulnerable. The old emperor has little time left. Master, victory is within reach. Jiang Yi has promised me the position of empress. When that day comes, so will the fall of this empire. Afu stared at me with burning hatred. Gone was her usual softness. This was her true self. Jiang Yi stormed over to her and ripped the cloth from her mouth. Is it true? Tell me. Afu let out a mocking snort. Your Highness, being defeated by a woman. How pathetic.
Slap.
Jiang Yi struck her hard across the face. I protected you, gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? Afu spat out a mouthful of blood. Shen Qingye, do me a favor and finish me off. Losing to you, I'll accept that. Thinking back on how, in the past life, she'd flaunted her power at my expense. How she died in her moment of triumph. Now that she was the one defeated, I wasn't about to let her off easily. You do something for me, I said, and I'll let you die whole. How about it?
She scoffed.
You want me to kill him? I smiled without answering. I do enjoy talking to clever people. Shun. But before she could finish, the very dagger that had once pierced me was now plunged into her neck. Blood gushed from the wound as her lips curled into a mysterious smile. Eyes wide open, she stared at Jiang Yi, dead, without peace. Her blood sprayed across his face. At that moment, Jiang Yi looked like a demon straight out of hell. He had completely lost his mind. Are you happy now? He roared. Shen Qingye, let me tell you, I have never loved you. Not for a single second. I almost laughed. I knew even in my previous life. And in this life, I never loved you either. He twisted the dagger in his hand, aiming for me. But I was ready. The moment he moved, I grabbed his wrist and twisted it hard. With my other hand, I struck the pressure point on his arm. The dagger dropped into my palm. Without hesitation, I turned and drove it straight into his heart. You should feel the pain I once felt. Jiang Yi stared at me in shock, blood flooding from his mouth. If you two love each other so much, then let death keep you together. I shoved him backward. He fell, stiff and lifeless, beside Afu. Shun Che rushed over to me. Sister, are you hurt? Let me see. I steadied my breathing and gently placed the bloodstained dagger into Afu's hand. Go, I told him. Have uniquely announced the new edict. The sixth prince ascended the throne smoothly. But as he was still young and lacked a strong foundation, Shun Che had no choice but to become regent. As for me, I finally gained my freedom. Unburdened by status or title, I wandered the world in peace. But one day, unexpectedly, I received a letter from Shun Che summoning me back to the capital. I thought it must be some major emergency. I rushed back in a panic, only to have Shun Che pull me aside, face full of worry, and say, Sister, I was kissed by someone against my will. What should I do? The end.